This is KUGAN CASSIUS for Icon TV in association with Macklin's Gym Night Out.
You're smirking because you're excited, aren't you?
I'm not excited, I just found it funny that Golden Boy in K2 finds you more important than Sergei Kovalev.
Do you know what? Right, so I'm sitting there. Firstly, thank you Tom Loeffler for the unbelievable tickets. I was in front of 50 Cent, I was in front of Lennox, I was in front of Kovalev, and so I'm sitting there. I think it was it in between bouts? Or yeah, I think it was in between bouts. And there's this camera, and it's filming me. It's 10 yards away, and it's like, so I'm there. I was there with my pal, and I sort of said to him, because everyone was going up on a big screen, and he went to me, "Are they about to put you up on a big screen?" And I went, "Shut up, don't be daft." Anyway, I've looked, kept going like this, and the camera's just on me. So I'm thinking, surely, like they'd put up Michael J. Fox, like Duran, all this stuff. So I'm thinking, what is going on here? And I thought, I better just check who's behind me. Turn around, and obviously Kovalev was 3 rows behind me. So then they come on the big screen, and I looked up so you could hear the noise. And just,
what were you drinking?
Vodka and tonic.
And you made your first appearance on BoxNation?
I know, apparently so, yeah. That probably boosts their subscription. But no, it was a good show, good to be there. Very impressed. I mean, not just with Golovkin, but I haven't been to Madison Square Gardens for probably 20 years for a fight. And it's a wonderful arena, isn't it? I mean, great energy when Golovkin came out.
Were you disappointed with Lemieux?
Spoke to a few people about it, and he didn't really put it on the line, did he? But then it's easy for us to sit there and say that because he got hit by 2 jabs in the first round, and I think from there he just thought, wow. And he was out of range a lot of the time. So I don't know whether that's because Golovkin's feet are so good, which they are, or Lemieux sort of was a bit half-hearted in his attacks, which I don't blame him for either. But it was completely one-sided, wasn't it? I mean, there wasn't even a round that was overly competitive because Golovkin's so good. Lemieux's not an elite level middle, like, do you understand what I'm saying? I don't rate him as one of the top fighters in the division. He's won a world title, but he's been beat before.
He's in the top 5 or 6, surely.
Middleweights?
Yeah, why not?
Probably. Maybe. But look at his wins. I mean, his best wins, Hassan and Dan. And that was a good fight, you know. But Golovkin will fight anyone. Eubank Jr.
Yeah, we'll come on to that in a minute. What did you make of his hair? I don't know, Hopkins made some reference to having that hair in the ring and it being not appropriate.
What, Lemieux?
Yeah.
Why?
Didn't you see, like, all the way through the fight, he was having to brush his hair back, but Hopkins went off on one about it after the fight. Yeah, and that's like his fight, so.
Maybe that was the difference.
I don't believe it's
obviously
wasn't the difference.
It's just his style, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure the hair was particularly relevant to the fight.
A few people made a point about it, but anyway.
He looked bloated, Lemieux. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, a couple of things that impressed me about Golovkin. One was his feet. 2 was his jab, which I haven't really seen as much of as I did in that fight. But 3 was like, at the end of the round, he'd go, and he'd walk back, and he didn't even look like he was breathing. And, you know, I think you're going to see so many more levels from him, but you're only going to see those when he's in with. But then you look at the middleweight division, who is there? I mean, that could challenge him. And I think those challenges might come at super middle, or might only come when certain fights develop.
So, Sky ran with a story yesterday regarding Eubank Jr. saying he wanted to fight Golovkin. And I thought about this for a moment, and when the Eubanks first mentioned about Golovkin, which was months and months ago, I kind of thought it was ridiculous for someone who hasn't won a British title yet. Then I thought, Eubank Jr. is ranked #1 with the WBA.
which Golovkin is champion.
Which Golovkin is champion for. But why wouldn't he want to fight Golovkin? Listen, regardless of whatever with Eubanks, I've got to just say it is, why wouldn't Chris Eubank want to fight Golovkin? And I put a tweet out yesterday, everyone was like, level, like Glenn McCrory even said, he's like 3 levels above Eubank, blah blah, but is that an ultimate goal for Eubank?
Yeah, I think, Junior come up with a good quote, which was about right. He said, people seem to be running from Golovkin, I'm running to him. So I think Golovkin, Junior's aspirations is to fight the very best in the division. That's where he believes he's going to be. And Golovkin is by far the best in the division. Junior is number 1 in the WBA. So there's only value in being number 1 in Gennady Golovkin's governing body if you're going to fight him. So, and let me tell you, they're deadly serious about fighting him. For me, it's a fight I'd like to see in 3 or 4 fights' time. Obviously, he's got to take care of Jetta this Saturday, Spike O'Sullivan on December the 12th. I'd like to see him have another one in March or April. Perhaps next summer, that could be a time where he's ready for that fight. But I'm dictated to by English, or Chris Eubank Senior, and Adam Booth now in that respect. So when I'm told to pull the trigger, I'll pull the trigger, and I can make that fight now. Because no one wants to fight Golovkin. So they're crying out for a good commercial name or fight, which makes sense. I spoke to English yesterday on the phone, and he said to me, I think my son can beat Golovkin. He said, when I fought Nigel Benn, everyone said the same. You're miles out of your depth. This guy's, he's on another level to you. And I wanted to take that challenge. The one thing I'll say about Chris Eubank Jr., and I feel a bit uncomfortable with Chris Eubank Senior or English. I don't know, because every time I call him English, I get the impression people watching this are saying, why are you calling him English? But I've got into that mould now. The one thing I'll say about them, they will take the fights. They want the biggest, most dangerous fights out there. They want to fight Gennady Golovkin. And whatever you think, if you think he's ready, if you think he might be ready in 6 months, if you think he'll never be ready, respect the fact they will fight Golovkin. They want to fight Golovkin. They have no fear to do so. People might say, oh well, they're deluded. Call it what you want. I call it belief in their own ability.
Okay, 2 questions. First question, in your opinion, does Chris Eubank Jr. beat Gennady Golovkin today?
No. So, but I will say this, can he compete with Gennady Golovkin? I'm only saying no because I'm basing it on what's happened so far. I'm basing it on the fact that I haven't been around him enough to see just how good he is and just what he's got in his ammo. When you speak to people who, you can't hear the words of Senior when he talks about boxing. I'm not talking about the verses and the rhymes and life. I'm talking about boxing and not take him seriously. So it's not a case of this guy's nuts. He sees something that he believes can compete and beat with Gennady Golovkin. Carl Froch, I spoke to him yesterday. He phoned me up. He wanted to get the lowdown about Golovkin. Then we started talking about Eubank. And Froch said to me, you know this kid can really, really fight, don't you? Talking about Eubank. I said, yeah, I do. We didn't start talking about the Golovkin fight, but Froch said, this kid is a world-class middleweight. Adam Booth. Now, these people who know much more about boxing than you and me believe that this kid is a very special talent. Do I believe that Eubank can beat Golovkin when the time comes? That's another question. Because we don't know how good Chris Eubank Jr. is. If he's as good as the people tell me he is, then when he's ready, he might beat Golovkin. He might not be at that level. But I can only listen to people who I respect and know about boxing. And these people aren't like some internet nutcase. This is a former 2-weight world champion. this is one of the best trainers in world boxing. This is one of the best British fighters of all time. Do you understand? So the references are glowing about Chris Eubank Jr. But if I'm involved in his career in terms of the fight making, which I would like to hope I am, this is a fight that can happen next summer rather than February or March, which I'm being told to look at.
I rate Chris Eubank Jr. quite highly, but you're talking about glowing references from his promoter, his dad, and his trainer.
No. I'm talking about glowing references from trainers, and even trainer before he was even his trainer, the father, but not a father. Some fathers who I've met who, have never fought, or every father thinks their son is the dogs, don't they? But if you've been a fighter and you know the game, you can't just have rose-tinted glasses, and he hasn't. And the other one I'm talking about is Carl Froch, who's sparred many, many rounds with him. And other people who have sparred many, many rounds with him as well. I'm not one who's going to shout from the rooftop about Chris Eubank Jr. against Golovkin. All I'm saying is, he's number one in the division, where Golovkin has his belt. He wants the fighting. And people tell me, and I believe, I need to see more, that this kid is a world-class talent.
Hypothetically, if our friend Tom was to phone you today and say, for example, we won't be able to face the winner of Canelo Cotto till some point next year, we want another fight in between, and offered you the Eubank fight for the next, 3 months, would you take that fight?
It's not up to me.
No, but do you think they would take that fight now?
Yeah, I think they would, yeah.
But surely you've got someone saying...
I've got so if they ask, that my job, and people have got to understand this as well, as a promoter, you put the opportunities on the table for a fighter, trainer, manager, if they're not self-managed, and either collectively you make the decision, or the fighter and the trainer will make the decision, and the manager. So my job is to provide the best opportunities for Chris Eubank. If I provide those opportunities, and Chris Eubank Jr. or English say to me, what do you think? I'll give my opinion. I don't think now is the right time, because I believe I can build Chris Eubank Jr. into a household name, into a more complete fighter because of the opportunities and the fights that I can deliver for him. And I think he'll grow over time. I believe in 6 months or 10 months, he's going to be a much better fighter than he is now. So why not look at the fight then? Jetta on Saturday. Spike O'Sullivan is a brilliant fight. And by the way, we're talking about fights beyond Spike. This is a tough fight. And you said to me, if you make Spike O'Sullivan against Eubank on the same card as Joshua against Dillian White, you are the Don. I've still got the text.
A Don.
Well, this is going to be very interesting. Because I think the Don puts you in a very difficult position. Because that means no one else is capable of being a Don. Because I'm the Don.
A Don.
Let's just...
I know what I'll write to do.
If you get Eubank Spike on the same bill as Joshua White, you, Edward, are a Don. Okay.
But I'm very excited for that card because I was very excited for Joshua White, and now I'm equally excited.
That's a great card. We've got so much more to add. So, but that's 2 bad blood, 2 rivalries, 2 fights that you're going to see a wonderful build up for, and a great fight, 2 great fights. So that's great. I think that's a great fight for him. It's a tough fight. There'll be an announcement after the fight on Saturday, provided we get the victory, on what that fight will be for, and it's huge news for both of them. So it's a wonderful fight. I take my hat off to Spike O'Sullivan. He's been very well paid, but he deserves to be paid for a fight like that, and it's a huge opportunity for him. But he talked the talk, he wanted the fight, and I tell you, when I sat down with Chris Eubank Jr. and talked about the Spike O'Sullivan fight, Dad said to me, make that fight now. Make it for Sheffield. I was like, Sheffield's 3 weeks or something, and he's fighting, Spike had a fight, we'll make it next. Chris, I'll make that fight. You sure you want? You know, they will fight anyone, and that's good news for fans. You know, I know you can say, oh, he's not ready for him, but they will fight anyone. There's too many fighters out there that won't fight anyone. These guys will fight anyone.
What have you been told about why he didn't rematch Billy Joe Saunders?
They couldn't agree terms. By the way, that's a fight which they constantly tell me, can you get us that fight? They want the fight, but I guess I had the better deal for them. Whether that's the whole package, I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about the offer, but they didn't want to take the fight because they couldn't agree terms.
Okay. Two people are suggesting that Brook isn't really injured and he was pulled off this card so you can justify a potential pay-per-view date on December the 12th. Can you make a response?
I mean, it makes me laugh, but I suppose if I have to justify it, I will. So, firstly, when Tyson Fury pulled off the card, Klitschko pulled off the card for Tyson Fury, it was a complete disaster for the Brook show. Okay, so we then had to come up with a deal by allowing that pay-per-view to go in November that allowed us to go with Brook on Sky Sports 1. That deal was done. Financially, everything was in place for October 24th. Great. We'd got out of jail, Sky Sports fans had Brook on Sky Sports 1, we had the Fury pay-per-view, they got their slot and date that they wanted on November 28th, everyone was a winner. Brook has trained for 14 weeks for the Diego Chavez fight. Now people say, oh, his weight was off. He was, I think, 1 pound over where he was for the Jojo Dan fight when he went into that spar. He sparred with David Avanesian, who was about to fight for the world interim title, got whacked in the ribs. After the spar, he felt very uncomfortable. They lifted his top up, he had a huge swelling around his rib. He went straight to the doctors. By the way, the doctor's report sent to the IBF, and we'll probably issue it later today as well. Talking about tendon damage, tissue damage all around the ribs. Won't be able to spar for 4 or 5 weeks. Okay, so that's the phone call I got on Thursday while I was travelling from Phoenix to Chicago. Okay, when I got that phone call and that news, do you have any idea what a kick in the nuts that is after everything that's gone on with Fury Klitschko? I can't even tell you. It makes me feel sick just thinking about getting that news. So then what happens is, you have to go out, you have to think about a refund policy, you have to think about the show, which now, with Brook off the show, that fight's got to be rescheduled. The rights fees change. The gate receipts change. We've got to refund everybody. We've got to put a partial refund in place. Now we're faced with the situation of, do we still go ahead with the show? Because now I'm going to do my proverbials by just running the show. Well, the answer is, I've got a contract with Eubank Jr. I've got a contract with Tony Jetta. I've got the parody fights made. And when I first told Adam Booth, his reaction was, I'm guessing you're going to pull the show now. No, we believe in Eubank Jr. We're going ahead with the show. Now, then you look on Twitter, oh, it's so obvious, he's just adding it to December 12th. You don't phone up Brook and say, I know you've been training for 14 weeks. Just to let you know, I'm now going to move you 8 weeks later. Can you just think about that for a second? What do you think Brook's going to say? Oh, no worries, mate. I wasn't looking forward. He's got a holiday booked for the week after October 24th to go away for his missus. Brook's trained for 14 weeks. He does not get paid on October the 24th. He's absolutely distraught that he can't have this fight. So don't tell me that I phoned him up and said, mate, keep going for another 8 weeks and then you can go on that show. He's devastated. And by the way, it is very unlikely that Brook will be ready this year. Very unlikely. We get a report on Wednesday, tomorrow, he's going for more scans. They won't let him spar for 3 or 4 weeks. That means then we're into middle end of November, right? People are talking about December 12th. Is there a possibility he could go on the December 12th card? Yes. Is there a possibility he could fight on December 19th? Yes. Is December 5th a possibility? No. Why are you looking at me like that?
December 19th.
I might do a show with Brook.
Right.
The only chance he has, the later in December, but the doctors are saying it's very unlikely he'll be able to box this year. You've got to understand the mentality of fighters. You don't just phone them up and say, pretend that you've got a rib injury and I'll put you on in 9 weeks. What fighter in their right mind is going to go, okay. Like, he's worked his absolute nuts off for 14 weeks to get his weight right down to be ready to fight for the world title. He wants to get in there, he wants to fight, he wants to get paid. So that is the long and short of it. And by the way, to add that fight to December 12th isn't great either, because it costs a lot of money, that fight. And by the way, if you're asking me, oh well, he's got to put that on because he's got to convince everyone that it's pay-per-view. I never ever had a thought to put Brook on December 12th, and if I'm running a card that I think is going to happen on December 12th, it doesn't need Brook to be pay-per-view.
It would be great if he was on it.
Well, great for the punters, especially if you bought your ticket.
Yeah, it makes no difference for people that were originally going to buy the fight or go to the fight if Brook was added to it.
Well, of course it does. I mean, it makes no difference.
Well, what I'm saying is, it's not like they're having to pay more money.
I'm saying they're having the result of all results.
That's what I'm
saying.
Yeah. More money or the whatever.
But we put a model together that meant that Brook could box on Sky Sports 1 on October 24th, and everything was perfect. The finances worked out, the fans were winning, we were winning. We'd sold 7,900 tickets in Sheffield. We had 10 days to go. We would have done close to 9,000. Perfect. Now all of a sudden, and you can go into the office and check with everyone, it is a complete administrative, logistical nightmare. This is the worst business in the world. In the world. Speak to any promoter, they'll tell you the same thing. It's absolute nightmare.
So,
you know, you had Frankie Gavin pulls out against Eggington, then you had Brook pulls out, and it just goes in cycles.
What crowd are you expecting?
I've no idea.
Half?
We had just under 8,000 tickets out. So, and I think as of today, this morning, we had 360 odd customer refunds, and the average is about 3 tickets per purchase. So say 1,000. So at the moment 1,000, but that's just yesterday. I would think we'd have 3,000 or 4,000 in there. We've still got a good bill, and we've still got a lot of undercard fighters who have sold a lot of tickets, and they all still want to come. So, but when I got the first tweet about, oh, it's just a move for December 12th, I just sort of started laughing, and then it was like thousands of people saying, so obvious what you're doing, and it is frustrating. But I do think it's unlikely you'll see Brook fight this year.
Just going back to your December 12th card, if say Brook Chavez is not on that card, what are you still adding to that?
Well, I've got Joshua against White, I've got Spike O'Sullivan against Eubank, I've got Bellew in a big fight which will be announced very soon. I've got Campbell in a big fight, I've got Mitchell, could have Gavin against Eggington, well, it was a tough fight for Gavin. And one more up my sleeves, so about 7 fights.
We'll talk about Bellew. Potential world title fight or not?
Yeah, everything's just going through a process at the moment. So it's a very good fight, very tough fight. 50-50 fight against a big cruiserweight name. And I think when it's announced, people will think it's a great fight.
And reference to Campbell and Mitchell, why don't you just stick them in together?
A lot of people saying that. Just don't think it's the right time. That's my honest opinion. You know, you talk about fighters where I do have not control, but a say of, and there's 2 fighters there, Mitchell and Campbell, who trust my opinion in terms of matchmaking and guidance, and I don't feel that it's the right time to put those 2 in with each other. That's my honest opinion. I think Mitchell's going to get a world title shot in early 2016. And I think Campbell's going to be a fantastic fighter and go on for a long time, be a world champion.
What route are you targeting with Mitchell?
Well, there's some news coming soon on Mitchell, but Campbell is now number 5 or 6 in the WBC. He's 9 or 8 in the IBF. So I said before in an interview, we're looking at the Tony Luis fight for Campbell, who had a great fight with Derry. I think it's a great fight. There's a nice
for December 12th.
Yeah, there's a nice round robin going now domestically, isn't there? You know, obviously you got Flanagan, great win the other week. I think Flanagan's going to try and fight Derry on December 19th, which is, I don't know what's going to happen with Barroso, because it's supposed to be Derry versus Barroso for the winner of Crawler Perez. So then you got Burns fighting Josh King, who's I think 6 or 7 in the WBO on November 7th. Big fight for Burns' career. You got Mitchell, you got Crawler Perez on November 21st, you got Campbell, you got Tommy Coyle back out on the 21st. So Scott Cardle's boxing Masha Dodds on November 7th. So he's, you know, he wants all those other guys. At the moment, he's probably only purely because of the people he's fought, just sitting below him. But he wants to fight those guys. So, you know, but the lightweight division's in great shape.
Just to recap on last week, obviously it started off in Arizona, Phoenix, Lee Selby.
Phoenix, Arizona.
Lee Selby and Montiel. What did you think of Lee Selby?
I think he was a bit harsh on himself. You know, he wasn't happy at all with his performance. It's difficult, you know. You have to look at what he's experienced over the last couple of years. He's boxed in front of packed arenas with red hot atmospheres. You know, 02, when he won the world title on May the 30th, was one of the best atmospheres I've seen in boxing. And he gets very nervous before fights. He was almost petrified when he walked out that night. When I arrived in Phoenix, it's not a criticism necessarily of American shows, but there is no atmosphere. So you're in a changing room, and I said to him about half a dozen times, Selby, you've got to get yourself up for it in the moment, because it's not going to be the same when you walk out there. He knew exactly what was going to happen, and he knew exactly how he needed to be. But he just, and it's his fault, and he knows that, but he couldn't. I know it sounds unprofessional, but it's not. He couldn't get himself up for, or all the things that normally happen that kick you into being up for a fight wasn't there. So you walk out from behind the curtain and you're like ushered to the ring, because they didn't do walk-ons because he was first on the broadcast. So that, and then you're in the ring and there's no MC, and everything's very different on these shows. You know, I did an interview with Dave, or Dewey Powell, and I said, you know, those events are, in my opinion, made for TV events. They're not necessarily driven by crowds or driven by atmosphere. So, and I think Carl Frampton suffered from that as well in his performance. Frampton normally walks out, one of the best atmospheres in boxing, just blood pumping through your veins, adrenaline. It gets you sharp, it makes you sharp, it makes you switch on. It's very easy when those factors aren't there to not be as switched on as you normally are, and that will affect your performance. And that's what happened to Lee Selby, in my opinion. But it was a good win against a very experienced opponent, and it was a good learning fight. And
First time in America.
yeah, I don't think it was a bad performance. I think he expected himself to be better. I think most people did, but it's difficult, you know. I said to him, at the end of the day, when you look back on your career, it's Fernando Montiel, 112, Phoenix, Arizona, IBF world title. You know, it was a good experience for him.
How far or how long before you think Lee Selby will potentially face one of the other champions in the weight?
I think he could have his mandatory next, which is between Barros and Eric Hunter. I think I'd like to see Lee Selby box in Wales next time. And I think there's a good chance of that happening. So, and I think they want the Warrington fight. And I know Warrington wants it. So I think that's a fight that could happen in May, June. So So you'll see him box probably February, something like that. And then I'd like to make the Warrington fight.
But obviously, in regards to like people like Santa Cruz and...
Yeah, I don't think Selby's looking at those guys next. And I think
he should be, shouldn't he? He's world champion.
Yeah, maybe. But I think he's also... I think what the Montiel fight showed is that he's still lacking a little bit of experience. You know, I think he's had 19 fights, something like that, 20 fights. So some of these guys have had 35 fights, 40 fights. Montiel's had 60 odd fights. So, and I think Montiel old-manned him in there. He was very clever. It was closer than the scorecard suggested. But Selby's in no, that's the truth. He's in no tearing rush just yet to fight a Santa Cruz or a Morris. He would fight them tomorrow. But I think there's things he wants to do first. I think he'd like to come home and have a homecoming fight. I think he'd like to fight Warrington at Ellen Road. And I think probably those fights, Santa Cruz, if he's still undefeated, are more realistic towards the end of next year.
Moving on from Phoenix, you went to Chicago, Illinois.
Unbelievable.
And it's a bit, not patronising, it was a great performance by Nathan Cleverly, but it wasn't enough against Farah.
It was one of the best fights I've seen. To be fair, the broadcast that night on Spike, we had Kono against Kamida, which I don't know if you saw that, but it was an incredible fight.
Samiki's brother.
Yeah, and then Cleverly from Farah. Different kind of atmosphere. There's, I don't know, 3,000 or 4,000 there, but very emotionally charged, large Polish contingent in the crowd, really good atmosphere. And that switched Cleverly on. I knew that if Cleverly didn't win this fight, it would be a very, very close fight. And that's one of the reasons we decided to take the fight, because I knew his stock levels would rise. And did they rise? Wow, I mean, what a fight. And I'll tell you what, if he hadn't broken the nose, I think he would have beaten him. I had him 4-2 up after 6, and I think the judges had it kind of similar. And how he survived, how he boxed on with that nose and the ear, I mean, people don't see the other side of boxing. So we left there. The commission made us hang around to do the drugs test, which was outrageous in my opinion. I wanted to get him to hospital straight away. He was battered. His nose was out here. The swelling was come around his orbitals. Here, this is what you never want to see, swelling on the forehead. His ear was out here. He had a gash behind his ear. He had 2 huge cuts in the palate of his mouth, which we had no idea how that happened. A cut on his tongue. He was, I said that he gave the blood test for his drugs, and then they wanted to wait for him to urine test. And in the end, I said to him, absolutely not. I said, you come with us to hospital, we're leaving now. Got an ambulance straight to the hospital, sat in there till 3 or 4 in the morning. He was, honestly, people don't see what these guys go through. He's sitting there on a hospital bed, he can't move his face. The doctors are talking to you, I mean, it's like, this sport is abnormal.
I heard you lost the plot.
Where?
There.
Where?
After the fight.
In where?
I just heard someone said to me you was going mental about that situation you just talked about.
You know what I said? One of the drugs testers, I said to him, listen, I'm taking him to hospital now. He said, you're not allowed to leave here until he does his urine sample. I said, let me tell you something now. I said, did you watch that fight? Yeah. I said, then you be quiet and you understand I am taking him to hospital now. If something happens to Nathan Cleverly and he's not in hospital, 1, I'll never forgive myself. 2, you will be accountable. And this sport, what he went through in that ring on that night it's not normal. They threw 2,400 punches. He got hit, he was actually having half a joke about this, he got hit 600 times, Cleverly, in that fight. 670 times, something like that, and hit the other guy 10 times less. And you got this guy telling me he's got to wait. We were there for nearly an hour in a change room. And then he told me that he won't be paid if he goes. And then I couldn't, you know. And I said to the commission came in, and I explained to the commission, and they said, oh, well, I said, listen, you imagine he collapsed in that change room, and he had a bleed on the brain. You know, it's just, you can't, you know, and then the day after, there was a fight on a Saturday night where a fighter had a bleed on the brain. And they're the kind of fights where injuries like that happen. Hello. You know, they're the kind of fights where injuries happen. Let me just shut that door. That's the security guard. Oh. Don't sound like much of a security guard. Yeah, so, you know, they're the kind of fights where injuries like that happen, and I did lose my reg, and then he went to hospital. But again, what kind of person sits there in hospital and he's saying to me, you'll make that rematch, won't you? Oh, he said, I had him, I would have beaten him 100%. Do you think you can make the rematch? And I'm looking at him thinking, are you even talking about fighting at the moment? Have you seen your face? I mean, like, he couldn't open his eyes, he couldn't open his mouth, he couldn't swallow, his ear was hanging out. Oh mate, you know, it was one of the most courageous performances I've seen in the ring. They called the doctor over, I think the 11th or 10th round, and they just looked at him and he said, don't stop the fight, I'm fine, it's only a broken nose. Only a broken nose. I mean, these boys are tough, mate, honestly. He's back, he's home, he's safe, he's sound, won't box again this year, obviously. Wants the rematch. Stock's just gone through the roof. And do you know what, I'm so pleased for him, because the Bellew fight was a stinker, and he didn't do himself any favours in that fight at all. He's fighting the wrong weight, basically. But he wanted the fight, and he felt that cruiserweight would improve him. But the fact is, he made 12-7 for this fight with ease. So he'll be at light heavyweight, and he'll get another big fight. But he's almost resurrected his career, don't you think? Yeah, you know, in defeat, which is, it's just what I keep saying to people. If you're good enough and you're going to compete in these fights, a loss at that stage of his career, he's lost before. You know, he's lost to Bellew, Kovalev and Fonfara. It's not the saddest story, is it? No. You know, now I'm really excited for his future, and so is he. But, you know, those fights take a lot out of you. And they're special people, these fighters, you know. They are so brave. You know, you sit there in the hospital bed and you just look at them in admiration, because you think, how have you done that? You know, at what point, you know, when the doctor comes over, it's so easy to pull yourself out of a fight and say that you can't breathe, or your vision's not great. They stop the fight instantly. Or say to the corner man, listen, Darren, you're going to have to pull me out, mate. That's not in their makeup. Unbelievable.
Just going back to last weekend, obviously, you still had a show in Birmingham. Mm-hmm. Started with Cowie fight, becoming British champion. Yep. Great fight between Egginton and Dale Evans. Yeah. Macklin in a tough fight.
That's one of them. It was a show that had two absolutely cracking fights on. You know, I think Fight of the Year contenders used quite a lot, but they really were. I thought Gamal Yafai was, pause a bit harsh, but you know, he had a hand injury and laboured through a win. Cal Yafai was just levels above Cunningham, but Macklin against Wellborn was just an unbelievable fight. And listen, massive credit to Wellborn. People are quick to write off Matthew Macklin, but Wellborn fought the fight of his life on Saturday night, and Macklin, I felt like he boxed well. I mean, there were a couple of scary times when he was sitting on the ropes, but he knew what he was doing. But sometimes you need that bigger test to get yourself up for it, and I thought it was a good win for Macklin. Egginton against Dale Evans. I had a feeling something like that was going to happen, because you know when you've been training for someone else and you're not quite switched on and your mojo's not really firing, and Dale Evans can really whack. And that knockdown was Frochgrove-esque, wasn't it? Squared the feet up, straight down the pipe, you know, down, he's straight up again, tough boy, strong boy, fit boy. And even in the 12th round, Eggington was in trouble. You know, it was a brilliant fight.
What was that prize fight when Eggington fought? Who did he get hit with a shot?
Dale Evans.
Was it the same one?
Yeah.
I wondered, that was a Civic Order in
I
Wolves.
believe so. Yeah, I think it was.
I remember seeing, that's the first time I see Eggington.
Yeah, he got beat in prize fight, and he got. Maybe he got decked in his first fight, and he went on to win. I don't know, but it was whatever the knockdown was. It was the same kind of knockdown. We can look it up after. But no, I mean, listen. As always, we had quite a bit of stick for that show, pre-show, because again, Frankie Gavin pulled out. I mean, there's not a lot you can do. If Gavin's on, all of a sudden it's a great show, but there's an argument that the Evans fight was much more entertaining than the Gavin fight might have been. But as it turned out, unfortunately for some, it was a pretty entertaining show. So there you go. So all eyes on Eubank this Saturday. Gavin McDonnell against Parody, a really good fight for the European title. Josh Whale against Lee Wood, great fight. Atif Shafiq against Jamie Robinson, which is a local one. They've sold about 1,000 tickets between them.
Dave Allen's fight off?
Dave Allen's still fighting, he's got a new opponent,
New opponent.
What else? Then November 7th.
Who's fielding who?
Fielding against Callum Smith. I'm like that now for the injuries. It's like every time the phone goes, Joe Gallagher, Rocky, I'm so, please. So 2 weeks to go on Saturday for that fight. I've got about 300 tickets left. It's going to be a 10,000 sellout. Burns on the bill. Cardle against Dodds. Duran against Smith. O'Hara Davis against Chris Truman, Jake Ball, etc. And then a huge night on the 21st November. Crollo against Perez, Murray against Abraham, Brian Rose, Tommy Coyle. Week after, Klitschko against Fury, De Gale against Bute. And then 2 weeks after, big one at the O2.
When will you make a decision whether you'll have another show in December? Is it dependent on this cohort situation?
Yeah, it is. I mean, Brook's definitely not going to be ready on the 5th of December. Definitely not. So he either has to go the 12th or the 19th. And I can't see him being ready for the 12th. So we either do a show on the 19th, or no fighter wants to box in January or February, because it means they've got to train over Christmas. Sometimes it's tough, but generally any fighter will tell you if they can box in December, it's fantastic. Get the fight out of the way, enjoy Christmas, start training again in January. But schedules don't always work out that way. No fighter wants to fight in July. But there you go.
Okay, well, I will finish off by asking you an update on Quick-Frampton. What's going on? You said about 2 weeks ago that...
No, it's about a week ago.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to jinx anything, but
we can take it as a positive sign?
Oh yeah, very positive. I think from here, it would have to take something strange for the fight now not to happen. I think I said in an interview the other week we had overcome most of the hurdles. We're not down the final straight yet, but we're nicely around the course. Now we're down the final straight. We've still got a couple of fences to jump, but generally from this position you should be winning a race.
Is one of the fences potential venue or not?
No, not really.
Okay, and date-wise, we can possibly early next year?
Yeah, February. Do you like that one?
I do like that one. I do like that
It's
one.
about time we made a fight like that.
So, this year, when you do your Sky Sports
Christmas
wish list...
Well, you know, obviously I'm going to could be 6 weeks out on Frampton Quig, so... But it's not, you know, I see a lot of criticism about our shows, and I know I always refer back and say that they're so much better than they used to be. But the longer the time goes on, you're only really going to be compared to probably the year before, not 3 or 4 years ago. So this year's been disappointing in the fact that there hasn't been the super fights.
There hasn't been a Foxboroughs?
No. And although it's been a great year for British boxing, loads of Brits in world title fights. You know, obviously De Gale won a world title, Brook's defended twice, Selby won a world title in the UK, Mitchell so close to winning a world title. You know, Crawler in that great fight with Perez where he deserved to win. Quigg devastating against Martinez. McDonnell defending his world title in great fashion and well, twice. You know, cleverly in a great fight with Fonfara. There's been a lot of highlights, but we've been missing the fights that really Joshua's rise. I think December 12th will be a very special night for boxing, and so will the 28th, but we haven't managed to make those mega fights, and I guess you know, if you're going to be harsh about it, it's not good enough. You know, I think the product's still good, but you have to make the mega fights. Sometimes you can't make them, sometimes it's my fault, sometimes it's fighters' fault, sometimes it's other camps' fault, but Quigg Frampton hopefully will show that you can make these fights and you can get there. And if we can make that fight where you've got two camps that really don't like each other, then we can make other fights too. You know, and Brook Khan's a great example. You know, I can't try any harder to make a fight like Brook Khan because I'm saying, just tell me what you want and I think I can deliver it for you. But they won't tell me what they want because they don't really want the fight. With Quigg Frampton, in the end, it was the desire of two camps to try and make this fight. And when you're sensible, when everybody calms down, when you look at it with a clear head and you look at it with your brain in gear and a common sense attitude, you can make all these fights. But yeah, we haven't seen enough mega fights this year, for sure. But we're also, and fans probably won't like to hear this as well, we're also in a building process with a lot of the new generation. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I'm talking about, obviously you got Callum against Rocky, which is coming up, which could be fight of the year. You got Selby, you got Warrington, you got Quigg, you got Campbell, you got all these fighters who, in time, will beat Joshua in these mega fights. Joshua White is a big fight, but you know, the loss of Froch, which was a big blow for British boxing, and I think people miss Carl Froch, you know, because you know what kind of fight Carl Froch is going to be in. But
we spoke to him the other day.
Yeah, he phoned me up. I knew what he was going to say. He went, "So what do you think then?" You know, I said, I don't know, because I said, look, all I can say is Lemieux's a good fighter, and he was just, it was so one-sided, the fight, and it was so easy. But
no inkling.
Against you, Carl, super middleweight, great chin, can punch.
What did he say?
Oh, no. I said, you know it's a massive fight, don't you? Massive. I mean, one of the things about being in the Madison Square Garden the other night gave me a desire to want to promote a fight there, and you know, because it's a very special arena, isn't it? And the buzz when Golovkin, I mean, it had a great feel to it. I thought the promotion was fantastic, and to do Froch Golovkin at Madison Square Gardens, you know.
Inkling about Froch?
I don't think he'll fight again. But I saw him on Saturday. He's about 12 stone 10.
You saw him on Saturday?
No, I didn't. Sorry, on TV.
Oh.
Yeah, definitely didn't see him on Saturday unless I had a time machine. But I saw him on the week before at the writers' dinner, and he looks fantastic.
But he's one of them fighters that is not a million miles off you.
But I'm saying, but if you live like that, you have the opportunity to go again. Once you go 14 stone, and all of a sudden, you know, but he's not that kind of character. So, but Froch Golovkin at Madison Square Gardens.
Did you boo Donald Trump?
No.
He got a bad reception, didn't he?
Yeah, but I think most people get bad receptions. I mean, remember when Khan came up on the big screen at Wembley? Sort of loads of boo. People like to boo people. I don't know why. I mean, if I come up, cool, imagine the boos. But really, we know everyone loves me, really. I mean, I know I get a lot of stick on Twitter, but deep down, like, really big fans.
Deep down. Alright, I think this is fine for the 50 other minutes.
Is it? Well, it's a good update, it's a good catch up.
Yeah. So, Sheffield this week.
And then Fielding Smith.
And Fielding Smith, so press conference Thursday.
Public workout, or media workout tomorrow in Brighton.
Yeah.
Press conference on Thursday, weigh-in on Friday. Guessing you won't be at the media workout tomorrow.
What can I do?
Looking forward to it. I'm looking forward. Eubank's an entertainer, both of them. And sport needs personality, characters. You know, when that story broke yesterday about Golovkin-Eubank saying, "I'm coming for you," there was a huge response. Most of it saying, "Don't be ridiculous, you're mad." But there was still a huge response. It doesn't matter. Remember that the father spent the majority of his career with people talking about him in a negative way. Remember that his father filled nearly every arena he ever boxed in and was one of the biggest fighters the country's ever had.
Do you know, I've got no reason to say this, but I don't think this is ridiculous as people make out.
What?
About him wanting to fight Golovkin.
But he's number one. Like, you know,
I don't think it's as
if this was a guy who he has the interim world title in the WBA. So if this was a guy who was like 8-0, or a guy that was like 15-5 and was ranked 15 in the W, you'd say, but you have to have aspirations, and he wants to fight the very best, and Golovkin is the very best. So it's more a matter of when rather than if, because when Eubank wins, and I believe he'll beat Spike O'Sullivan as well, by the way, I like Spike a lot, that's, you know, you've got Quillen and Jacobs, and you've got Golovkin. So what happens if the winner of Eubank Spike fought the winner of Quillen Jacobs and beat him? What would you say then? It's the natural fight, isn't it? Then it's a fight that has to happen, rather than a fight that should happen. But I go back to the fact, and fans should embrace it, Eubank Jr. and his dad want to fight everybody, and will fight everybody. There is not a fight that I could put to the Eubanks now they wouldn't accept. Well, they can't, because they want to fight Golovkin. So everyone else is an easy fight in comparison.
Don't rule out Spike O'Sullivan.
Listen, Spike O'Sullivan's a huge puncher. He's a very good fighter. But of course, I have to back my man. And I believe Eubank will beat him. But Spike is very live in a fight. He's very dangerous. He's very good. He's a top bloke. He can really fight. But you know what side of the fence I'm on. But I can't wait for the press conference. Probably next week.
Are you doing two?
For what? Joshua? I'm not doing Eubank, Spike O'Sullivan on the same day as Joshua White.
No,
outrageous.
So
Imagine security.
You're doing two press conferences?
Yeah.
And you'll do them next week?
I think Eubank next week and Joshua the week after. Josh is away on training camp. And so's Dylan. So.
Okay. Alright, anyhow, thank you very much for your time today. Yeah. I'll
Cheers,
see you Thursday
Look forward to it, old boy.
for Sheffield.